All right, now let's talk about some Tether stuff. Some of you guys have asked me about this, so I'm going to clarify a little bit more. But Coinbase decided yesterday to throw out this whole campaign asking people to switch from Tether to USDC. And they're making it so that you could do so with zero fees. Okay. Usually Coinbase charges a fee for every single transaction. That's how they make money. But in terms of converting USDT to USDC, they're saying, we'll allow you to do it absolutely free. Okay. Why though? Why are they doing this? Well, a couple things. Number one is many in this space are fearing about what could happen if Tether collapses. Do they really have enough funds or do they not, right? They had some audits before. The audits were done by some shady companies that are now being investigated. So we don't know if they actually have the funds or the reserves, I should say, to back every single USDT out there. And some would argue that Coinbase is afraid of that and trying to be proactive and trying to get people to rely less on USDT and more on USDC, right? And there's good reason for that line of thinking too, because a lot of you guys do not know the history of Tether. Just recently, okay, this was last year, the New York Attorney General went after Tether because it turns out they had an 850 million hole, okay? You know how like Genesis and others right now, they're trying to patch like $1 billion hole. I'm sorry, not Bitfinex, but Tether. Well, no, it's actually Bitfinex. Bitfinex had an 850 million hole. Okay, Bitfinex is the company that issued Tether, and they're all under this bigger company called Ifinex, but they're basically all the same. So they had this 850 million hole because a bank overseas basically locked up their account and they had no access to it. And even to this day, I don't know if they got that back. So New York Attorney General realized, well, this is concerning, right? And how did they patch up that hole? They took a 850 million loan from Tether, okay, which means that basically they use customer assets. I mean, it's essentially the same thing. They needed to plug that hole. They didn't know what to do, so they took an interest-free loan from Tether and just gave it to themselves. And of course, this is a big no-no, right? And New York Attorney General slapped them with a lawsuit, and they eventually settled, and now they're required to report, like, get audited for 3 years or something like that. But still, there's no like major accounting firm that is looking at their reserves. But this happened. But how did they eventually get that 850 million back? You may be wondering, right? Because that's a big hole to patch. You know what they did? They came out with another token, the Leo token. Okay, I don't want to show this. So I was going to say yes. Here we go. They launched another token called Leo. So some of you guys may have seen Leo on CMC. You're like, what is this? It's a private token offering that they sold off, and they made $1 billion, and that's how they were able to plug the 850 million, right? So this was like an IOU token. Basically, hey, you know what? Buy this token, and we'll eventually pay you back, right? It's kind of like that. But you know, this is the playbook that a lot of these other companies are trying to follow. Like when they get in trouble, they're like, let's just come out with another token to try to recoup what we lost, right? Ifinex, Bitfinex, Tether did all this already. They did successfully. I guess they did it early enough where regulators were just really not paying attention. But I mean, this is bad because CZ has come out and said that he believes back earlier this year there was a period where Tether became unpegged to the dollar. It was like 0.996 or something like that, just slightly off. And it takes enormous amount of redemption to cause that to happen, right? So even CZ, there's this like, I guess supposedly there's these internal messages coming out, and CZ is saying that SBF also tried, and they admitted to Binance that they were trying to do this, right? So this whole thing about SBF and FTX, how they were behind Luna's crash and Three Arrows Capital crash and stuff like that, it seemed like they tried to crash Tether on purpose too, to try to, again, arbitrage and make money by getting them to depeg from the dollar, which makes me think that they didn't know that they were going to crash Luna. They knew that they could depeg the UST, but they didn't know how bad it was, and then that inadvertently hurt themselves afterwards, but they probably did it. And now CZ's coming out and saying they probably tried with Tether too and just failed, right? So to give Tether credit, that was a massive amount. I believe there was a time where I read it was like 3 or 4 billion that was redeemed over 24 hours, and they were still able to handle that. So it's going to take a lot more. A massive, massive, massive bank run to really test if Tether has the reserves. But right now, they do seem like they're okay. But as for stablecoins, I do still trust the others better. I still trust USDC better, especially since they're in the U.S., highly regulated, highly looked at, backed by Coinbase and Circle, right? And also, I trust BUSD more because it's basically backed by Binance and Paxos, right? So just be careful about Tether. Be careful about Tether. And for those of you guys that are wondering, what if Tether goes under, right? If Tether goes under, it will be absolutely disastrous. If you thought FTX going under is bad, if Tether goes under, you're going to have dozens upon dozens upon dozens of exchanges all go belly up overnight. A lot of these exchanges have billions, tens of billions of Tether on their balance sheet in order to offer the trading pairs that they do. And most trading pairs these days are with /USDT. So if Tether somehow goes belly up, the entire industry will be basically nuked by 1,000 atom bombs, and we will be set back a very long time. So let's hope that never happens and people just slowly move out and transition out, right? So there you go. There you go. Now, as for other news, well, speaking of CZ couldn't hold his tongue anymore. He's generally a nice guy, I would think, but he was so sick of SBF, so he decided to basically declare that SBF was a fraud, right, and sell off it. Well, you guys know the story, right? How he wanted to sell off the remaining FTT tokens, and then that led to fear, and then a bank run, and then the whole thing collapsed, and we know the story, right? But CZ is also still very, very, very mad. Like, I covered this last night, and CZ also, he couldn't believe Kevin O'Leary, right? Basically still defending SBF, right? I think this is what most people are mad about. Not only, yes, he was a spokesperson, but he continues to defend SBF. Continues. And CZ goes on and talks about this. And he's also particularly mad about this is because SBF and, to some extent, Kevin O'Leary are pointing fingers at Binance as if they are the evildoers. They're the ones that orchestrated this, and they're the ones that we shouldn't trust, right? So I think that is what's really like irking CZ, because even in that Kevin O'Leary interview, he mentioned Binance several times, right? And then he kind of alluded to the fact that he wanted to be in America, right? That's why he wanted to invest in FTX. But it didn't even make sense because FTX was in the Bahamas. It wasn't even an American company. But he was alluding to that as well. And in this massive tweet, basically CZ was saying, you know what, we try to exit them as fast as we could in 2021. Look at what FTX did in terms of spending money on the Miami Stadium, multiple Super Bowl ads, baseball referees, F1, not to mention their massive political donations and luxury real estate, right? And despite all this, he's saying, Kevin O'Leary, why are you still defending him? And to go on, he talked about how Sam has invested in friends in high places, from media to policymakers to celebrities. And he used those friends in high places to manipulate public opinion, including attacking CZ and others in the industry. Again, attacking how CZ and Binance is a Chinese company, and he is Chinese, and you can't trust him. CZ clarifies he is Canadian, and Binance is not a Chinese company, right? And then he goes on and says FTX is 1/10 our size, but they spent 100x more than what we did on marketing and partnerships, in quotes, meaning friends in high places, and fancy parties in the Bahamas, and traveling across the globe, and mansions for all their senior staff and his parents. I mean, man, CZ did not hold back. Basically, he got really, really ticked off by this interview and just went on and on and on. You know what? And here's the thing. SBF is still claiming that, I mean, he's still trying to make it seem like CZ is like somehow a bad guy or trying to lie or something, because SBF responded saying, you won. There's no need to lie now about the buyout. I don't even know what a buyout is. It almost seems like SBF was claiming that I was trying to buy Binance. That's ridiculous. I think he was talking about the FTT tokens that Binance still had, and he was trying to buy that. And he's like, I was frustrated with your negotiation tactics, but I still chose to do it. You threatened to walk at the last minute if we didn't kick in another $75 million, right? You won. Why are you lying about this? And SBF is like, focus on yourself, right? Don't try to get people to FUD us. So there's a little back and forth there. A little back and forth. But CZ is just really pissed off. I think a lot of people are pissed off. And again, going back to Kevin O'Leary, I think people are just really pissed off at the fact that he's the only one left that is still trying to defend him, saying that we need to get to the bottom of it. Before I condemn the guy, I need to see the books. I need to see this and that. I mean, it's so obvious at this point, right? But all right, so that's the latest. And then also, I did cover this before too, but Alameda supposedly, right, crashed Luna, Three Arrows Capital, and both Three Arrows Capital and Luna, their founders, Zhu Su, and Do Kwon, are both coming out and saying that FTX was what popped them. Okay? So now they're bringing up the fact that had they not done so, would they still be around, or would they have still popped? That's the question. They both were just too highly leveraged, too risky, right? High flying when things were good. When things were bad, they started coming down. But if it wasn't for SBF and FTX, if it wasn't for them trying to pop it on purpose, would have they popped, or would they be around? And we still have Luna in the top 10 right now. And if we didn't have this whole collapse of Luna and Three Arrows Capital and Celsius and Voyager and BlockFi and everything else, right? And now FTX, it makes me wonder how high we would be right now. Bitcoin could be at 40,000 right now, right? It just makes me wonder where we would be had the contagion not spread. We'll never know. We'll never know. But SBF is saying he didn't do it. He didn't do it. He didn't do anything. So, but he did agree. He did agree that he's going to be testifying in front of the House committee. Again, I don't think he's flying in. I think he's just doing a Zoom meeting. But I think everyone would prefer if he flies in, because if he does, he's just going to be arrested for questioning. So there's that. And then I think that's it. And then just a few other crypto news. And even before that, in 2016, Bitfinex suffered a huge hack of 119,000 Bitcoins. 119,000, right? How did they recover the 119,000 Bitcoins back in the day? Well, they created another token called BFX token and recovery rights token. Again, just like Leo, these are IOU tokens, and they said they would go pay people back. And supposedly they did through their profits, whatever. So you can see Ifinex, Bitfinex, they get in a lot of trouble. And what do? They create more tokens to hide their trouble. And their latest creation, besides Leo, is Tether. And they created that right after, a year after, they were hacked. So people are wondering whether or not Tether was just simply created to be a moneymaker for Bitfinex. And some people argue that it was used to manipulate the market. And one of the reasons why we had such a good run in 2017, because of Tether. So you could see that the history of Tether is just really shady, right? Going from Ifinex to Bitfinex to Tether and everything in between, and all the other tokens that were created by these companies, you could see how many people are very fearful. And the story goes even further than that because, well, I'll get to that in a little bit. Okay, so should we be worried about Tether? Why is Coinbase trying to get people to convert, right? Because we just don't know at this point. Right now, it's better to be safe than sorry, and I agree, right? So that's why I think Coinbase is trying to convert everyone from Tether to USDC so that the industry is less reliant on unknown stablecoin, right? Now, that's reason number one. There's also people that think that Coinbase may be in trouble. So why are they trying to get everyone to get into USDC, right? Is it because they need the money? They need the liquidity? There's people saying that right now. But I don't think it's the latter. I don't think it's reason two that Coinbase is desperate for money. That's why they're doing this. I think at this point in time, people are just trying to, or even industry is trying to weed out the bad, kind of like how CZ like weeded out FTX and SBF, kind of like that. It could be one of those moments right now. Also, just to remind you guys that BlackRock did partner up with Coinbase, right, recently. So this is a big thing. And I dug this up. BlackRock and Fidelity both invested in this $400 million funding round just a few months ago, right? So they're really trying to back USDC. So this could also be a reason why there's a big push into USDC. A third reason, and that's because BlackRock and Fidelity want to sow. They trusted more, right? Or they have other plans. So there's that as well. So overall, is Tether in trouble? I would say right now, no. I say right now, they're pretty liquid. But again, we're only speculating. I'm only speculating, right? We just don't know if they truly have $65 billion worth of USD on hand. Before, when they would release their audit reports, it would say that mass majority of that was in junk bonds from corporations and other things that were equivalent to dollars. But recently, they have been saying that they've been converting to dollars, trying to get to that 1-to-1 ratio like they promised, right? But we just don't know at this point, so that's why you just got to be careful. But Tether, to give them credit, they withstood some massive withdrawal or redemption periods, could be on purpose to try to depeg the USDT. Okay, we have seen that before. And that also relates to SBF. Robert Kiyosaki is still saying, hey, Bitcoin holders, you guys are doing it right. There's going to be a big crash. There's going to be a moment when people just turn away fiat at USD. You're going to look at something better like Bitcoin, and you're all going to get freaking wealthy because of that moment, right? Still waiting for that moment, and I do think it's going to come. You look at, some of the previous bad stuff that has happened. I mentioned Bitfinex. Bitfinex Hack was absolutely huge, but no one remembers it because it was in 2016 during the low, and everyone just remembers 2017. But also, of course, 2 years ago, we did have that COVID crash, right? We recovered from there quite nicely. And now we're facing the FTX crash, and we will get through it just like previous times, previous bad actors, previous scary macro stuff, right? We have seen it. and we will get through it. We will get through it. We got PPI number. It showed that prices went up a little bit more than expected, 0.3% rather than 0.2%. And that freaked people out because, again, people are afraid of higher inflation, meaning that Powell is going to be more aggressive with his rate hikes. Ultimately, that's what it means, right? But I was looking at this. I was looking at the CME kind of prediction for the next rate hike, which is next week, okay? It's still at 70, nearly 75%. 75% are anticipating that it's going to be 50 basis points. So right now, it seems like it's a lock, okay? And a 50 basis point rate hike is a step in the right direction. It means that the rates are still going up. Fund rate is still going up and could be going up for quite some time, but it's slowing down, right? So that means that the 75 basis point hikes that we have seen before could be behind us, and we see only 50 basis point hikes and 25 basis point hikes. Eventually, it stops completely, and then they may have to cut once again. So I don't know. The economic data that's coming out, some good, some not so good, some inverse. It's like it's kind of hard to predict at this point, right? It's kind of hard to predict at this point. So just want to lead off with that. Yesterday, the U.S. market actually rallied a bit because we got some bad economic data, meaning that we actually had good numbers, and today we had some bad numbers. So it's really hard to predict right now. But we don't have to wait much longer. The FOMC meeting will start next week, and we will get another press conference, and we will see what Powell says, not only for December, but what he anticipates in 2023. This will be the last one, of course, before the new year starts.